In the previous video we began a discussion about form levels of abstraction, form control levels of abstraction. We actually talked about two of the levels, the control referenced directly by its name, which is the lowest level, and the control referenced by its type, such as text box or checkbox or whatever its type is, which is the second level. In this video we're going to go up two higher levels of abstraction to the level 3, which is a control referenced as a generic word control, and finally the fourth level, which is a control lumped together with other controls in what's called a collection. And the control referenced as a generic control is really part of the phenomena of inheritance. When you have something like a text box or a checkbox and so on, it's a class that's actually inherited from the control class. So if you remember my discussion of inheritance, basically that means there's a lot of methods and a lot of data types or properties that are inherited from the parent control by, say, the text box, which is a child. And there's, in addition to that, things that are added to the text box that are new. You know, that's why you inherit. So you'll inherit a lot of methods and properties, and you won't have to write them over again, but you're inheriting because you want to add new things. So if you reference something with a generic control, it basically means you're going to lose something as well as gaining something. You're going to gain a level of abstraction where you're going to be able to manipulate a lot of things with one type, but what you're losing is the individual data. You know, it's a lot like statistics. I mentioned statistics previously. If you take statistics, you gain a lot of power in that you notice general trends, but you lose individual data about the individual people that are involved in the statistics. But all this will mean a lot more if we look at an actual program. Let's go to File and New Project, and we'll call this project CLOA02 for Control Level of Abstraction 2. Click OK. And we're going to need a lot bigger form because we're dealing with a lot more controls. So I'll paste the controls from the clipboard. And you see we have a lot of different types of controls. We have check boxes, we have radio buttons, we have group boxes, we have regular push buttons, and we have a label. And since all of these are derived from control, they can all be referenced as controls. And you'll notice I no longer need individual data, so these all just have generic names like button 1, button 2, label 1, checkbox 1, radio button 1, group box 2, and so on. So if I double click on the Change Universe button, let's see what we can do with this level of abstraction. Let's use a for each this time, and use the generic control. Name a variable C. And you see an interesting phenomena here. This refers to the form itself on this level, and I've used this quite often. And this dot controls, you have the keyword control with an S added, and this is a very common convention in C#. When you have a class like control, to get a collection of the classes, quite often you just add an S. So control is the generic class, and controls is the collection of that class. So let's say C.te text, And the reason we can use text is actually derived by everybody. Text is defined in the control, and everybody that inherits from that control also has a text property. But there's a lot of properties that get added, like for instance the check property is unique to like a radio button or a checkbox, and it's not in the generic control, so we can't use that. Something we're going to look at in a minute. So if we say c.text equals cyborg magus, what you might think will happen is all the text properties on the entire page will turn into cyborg magus, and you're partially right, but actually there's another phenomenon involved here that, well, perhaps the best way to explain it is for you to see it. Let's save it and then run this and click on the change universe button, and you notice all these buttons turn to cyborg magus. The check boxes both turn to cyborg magus. The label changed to cyborg magus. But what about this? The button inside this group box is still button 6. And the two radio buttons inside this group box are still male and female. And the reason for this is group boxes are a container. And the form is a container that contains the bigger universe, but the group boxes sort of contain a universe of their own that doesn't get touched when you just refer to this dot controls collection. These are outside that collection. They're part of the collection for this group box or for this group box. They have their own collections. Two things that are interesting to notice is the group boxes themselves end up changing to cyborg magus when it's run. So if we run this again, press change, cyborg magus is the name of this group box and cyborg magus is the name of this group box, even though the interiors have remained unchanged because they're part of the collections of the group box. And the other thing to notice is the type of the controls. The type of the controls is actually control.control collection. So it's one of these nested control types, like sub item in list views, where you have the list view item and then you have the list sub view item, and it's actually a dot separating the two. So the way we can get to the collections within the group boxes is our old friend recursion. We can write a recursive function. Make it a private void group set, I guess is a good name. And within the group set we want to have a parameter, which is the control collection, and call that CC. And then we can just copy this code from below and add a couple braces because we're going to need to add one more thing. So you remember my discussion of pre-order recursion. First you do something, which is setting all the text in the control collection to cyborg magus. We need to change this to be the control collection that we get passed. Or rather, it'd still be the control, but we need to change this to be the control collection that we're iterating through. And then once you do what the pre-order recursion does, then you need to recurse if a certain condition exists. So if we say if C dot has children, then we want to call ourselves, which is the nature of recursion. It's a matter of calling yourself, but this time with the C dot controls. So if we have a group box, or a group box set I should say, if we have a group box which has its own set of controls, this is actually group set, not group box set. I'll get this yet. So if the C has children, like a group box has children controls, we call with the group box controls collection, which is a collection owned by that group box. So we recurse into this, and then once again go through all the controls in that group box and set their text value to Cyborg Megas. But if that's on the form itself, this C dot has children won't be true, because it is a child of the form. It doesn't have children. So, well, group boxes are a child of the form too, but they do have children, and like a button or a text box that's directly on the form doesn't have any children. So instead of doing this, we'll highlight this and do a Control E C to comment it out. Instead of doing this, we want to initially call the group set was this dot controls. So we call it with the collection of controls that's on the form, and that'll get us started, and we'll recurse anytime we hit a group box or some other container that itself has children. So if we save this and compile and run it, and this time press change universe, you see all the things that changed to Cyborg Megas before still change to Cyborg Megas because they're part of the collection of the form. But things inside group boxes also change because we recursed with that a reference to those controls and also set them with the recursive incarnation of the group set. Well, I wanted to go into controls that have unique property, like the checked property on a checkbox or the click property on a button, which has you can associate an event handler with and that sort of thing. But this video is getting a little long, so maybe I'll just move that to a third video on the controls level of abstraction. I'll see you in that third video, and don't forget to subscribe.